Okay, and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Smudcast number 689, Talking to Under the Mayo. This is very similar to the interviews we do in the past. We just talk to a person from YouTube about all kinds of things, whether it's a video or just general questions, all about his channel, all about their topics of conversation, and hopefully we'll have some good banter. That's pretty much how it goes here. And we have some questions from the community. We have some questions from ourselves on the panel. And hopefully we'll get a little more insight into Under the Mayo and his channel. If you're curious about Under the Mayo, we've covered at least 2 or 3 of his videos in the Smudcast, and we all had differing opinions, and they were all pretty much well done. Like, we always wanted to talk to Under the Mayo about some of his stuff. Apparently, though, I totally forgot about the Ragnarok stuff, and none of the questions are about that. So, interesting. Yeah. But they are about the Halo one. That's probably your most controversial one, and I do recall actually covering that. So that's one of my questions. So anyway, thank you for joining. Glad you reached out and said hi and all that jazz. So.
Oh, I'm happy to be here. These conversations are always fun and insightful. So nice to meet you guys. Hey, congratulations! Over 600 of these episodes. That's pretty crazy, man. That's great. I'm glad you guys are having some success with this.
Well, it's just things we've done for years and years. I don't think it's successful as opposed to just for fun. And
Sure. Okay.
It's why we get into these things. But you've been doing very well. You've been pumping out the videos. So good on you. There's always something every week, which is nice to see.
I try to not miss a week. And if I ever need to take like a week off for myself, I always try to have a backup video, like something that is not time sensitive. Like my Silent Hill video that I put out a couple weeks ago, I finished that in January. And I was just waiting. I was just waiting for like, when do I publish this? Like, does it even matter? Because I have a video on Dead Space that's already ready to publish. And so like, I just have videos, like 2 or 3 that are done that can come out whenever, and it doesn't matter. And so if I really need to take a break, I can be like, here, I'm just publishing this and I'm going to take a week off. So
that's a good workflow.
Yeah. It's so you don't get that burnout, because the making a video every single week for years, I mean, you can really get burnt out. So I just grind to have a couple extras so I can take a break when I need to.
You can also run out of things to cover, of ideas, and then you start just making up stuff like certain channels we tend to cover here.
Oh, well, I have not found myself in that position yet. I hope I never get there.
All right, let's start with
a good bar to set.
A basic question. What are you playing, not for your channel, but for fun right now, or this month, rather?
Oh, Jesus. I have not really played much for fun. Because, I don't know, I like it, at this point, I can't really separate it. Sometimes I just get games that I guess the latest surprise was The Bunker, Amnesia the Bunker.
Right.
I just got a code for that. I had no plans to play it or cover it. I just got it. I played it, and I fell in love with it, and I beat it 3 times over the next day. And I was like, so I definitely played that for fun. But when I'm playing something and I'm having feelings about it, whether they're positive or negative, I can't turn off that part of my brain that wants to analyze it and talk about it.
I've noticed a lot of your videos, whether it's a game you like or dislike, there seems to be a highly, I wouldn't say sophisticated, obviously you have to think about these things before you say them, but there's a very nuanced opinion that you don't get on other channels. And I think that's it throws me for a loop, because you're like, okay, this guy likes horror, he likes adventure, he likes all these genres. He doesn't, and you talked about your past, I think you're around my age, you played games in the 80s and 90s. So you played NES, you played Super NES, you played PC games, so you know all these adventure titles. So it's kind of like you're having an opinion that someone who really knows adventure games would have. I'd be like, what the heck are you talking about in King's Quest 7? Like, this happened. Like, why does that make it bad? Like, there's this little nuance that sort of irks you. And you're like, okay, why is this reload mechanic such a big deal? Is that like something you've noticed? Because I'll mention things like, I always bring up 2K3 because I coded in 2K3, Unreal 2K3. And I compare it to...
I love that game.
I compare it to 2K4, I compare it to a tournament, and there's always something special about 2K3 I come back to because of whatever, mutator or whatever. So for you, it's like there's this little thing about, let's say, Halo, in your popular Halo vid, where reloading is a big deal, for example. Why was that such a big deal for you at the time?
Wow, that was a lot. Uh, you want to go directly into Halo with reloading?
Just the mechanic as a whole, because that's where it sort of started, that whole conversation.
Well, it comes down to that being a first year video for my channel, really, where I wasn't really expressing something I really try to do now, which is expressing when I personally dislike something and when I actually think something is bad. That's something that I've gotten a lot better at. And for me, Halo's pacing, its two weapon limits, its reloading was something that bugged me then, and it's still not something that's to my personal taste now, but it is absolutely in benefit of the gameplay loop of Halo. Like, Halo is really well made, and the slow reloading and taking cover to recharge a shield and having a two weapon limit, etc., was just something that I didn't like. I didn't like the way it felt, and I was sad to see more and more games kind of go down that path over the next, say, 2 generations. And so it's not about reloading. I'm fine with games that have reloading. I mean, there's some boomer shooters that are coming out now where you have to reload every shell in the shotgun, like these. But I think that you can do it right and do it wrong, like any game mechanic. Like Proteus, I think, does it horribly, where you have to reload every single gun, and I don't think it fits the pacing. And then, like, if you have 8 guns, you shouldn't have to reload all your guns after the fight's done, because then you sit there for the next 20 seconds reloading every single gun in your arsenal. So there's the right way to do it and there's a wrong way to do it. But I don't think reloading in Halo is bad or a problem. I mean, Halo is Halo, and Halo is great.
Okay, because that was a different opinion that I read from or understood from your original video, saying it slows things down, or because
right. I didn't like it then because I was playing Unreal Tournament. I was playing the game you worked on. I was playing Bombing Run, right? I didn't want to have to reload my gun all the time. I didn't want to have, limited weapons and everything like that. And to anyone who saw that first Halo video, Halo Ruins first person shooters, I really recommend watching my follow up, because Shredded Nerd, a really good YouTube channel that talks about a lot of Halo stuff, he did a response video to mine, and I did a response to him, and then I had him on my podcast and everything like that. I really recommend you watch my follow up, because it goes into a lot of clarification about how a lot of what I was talking about in that video was not like objective critique of Halo, but rather about my personal feelings 20 years ago and how ultimately my feelings have come to change. So I would recommend checking that out.
Okay, so it's one of those things, you had a knee-jerk reaction. You're like, oh, I come from the world of arena shooters, and I want action and fast-paced stuff.
Yeah, it's how it affected me, and how I knew that there was a whole lot of other people that had my same story and would love to hear things presented this way. But of course, it leaves out all other kinds of nuance, which I tried to address it's a more of an emotional video than a flat out historical, layout of the facts. And if you want to criticize it for being that, then I totally accept that criticism.
Okay, fair enough. I was like, okay, we can't still maintain this opinion. You're like, no, I changed my idea. I was like, great, thank you. You've evolved, and I've seen the video in response. Not all of it, but I was like, okay, someone made a response to you. I'm like, that's smart. And then you did a response to that.
Yeah, well, because what was so weird was that I watched his video, and I heard from him, and I heard from a whole lot of other people who were coming in saying all this stuff as if they were correcting me. But everything they were saying was like, yeah, but I agree with that. Why is everyone taking this away? And I was like, okay, I need to make another video that clarifies this stuff. And that pretty much put it to bed, I think.
Okay, good stuff. Now, I did watch a recent video of yours called Horror Games Suck at Telling Stories, which is fascinating. I think that's not really a controversial video. It's not a big video to watch.
No, it's a niche topic.
Yeah, exactly. This is where I get your opinions. They come in from a very nuanced perspective. And one of I was with you up to about 7 minutes, like you're talking about excess dialogue, excess notes, excess even voice messages, which I think is an ongoing issue with storytelling in those style of games.
In many, not just horror. It's just that horror games seem to be getting particularly bad about it because games like it's like the developers are creating these more and more and more complex stories that they want to tell, and they're creating more and more lore that they want to get across to the player, but they're not actually crafting their gameplay in a way that serves the story. So they just jump of 15 notes in the first 10 minutes.
I don't think that is a gameplay issue. I think that is just, and I think you should have led with the point that you bring on after starting on the topic, that it's for you, there's no quantity over quality. You want the quality notes in the games, not the excessive quantity that just people seem to forget what the substance of these notes is. And up until the point when you clarified that, I got a bit antsy and furious with the video because I brought up exactly the criticism that you then brought yourself, and that made it seem less like nuance to me, but more like in the good interpretation, bad structure of the script. In the bad interpretation, it would be, oh, you put up a straw man to knock down yourself to look nuanced, which is unnecessary because you can just lead with the actual point and then give the examples afterwards.
No, that doesn't feel like a structure that would feel very satisfying to me personally to write. I like to do the long setup and then go to the point.
The point you made was at the 7-minute mark where you actually sequestered all your video into like every point you made. So that's when the point starts. And you said something like, I know that reading these notes annoy me, and you can just ignore it. But then you say something like, but is it fair that I don't get to enjoy the world of the game if I don't read? So it's like, okay, you're saying it's annoying. And if it is annoying, I'm not going to read it. But then it's not fair that I can not appreciate the world. So it's like, okay, is it your fault for not reading what the game was designed to give you, which is usually optional in these games, but then you give you give examples saying there are games that are purely adventuresome where you're like, okay, I don't mind reading those. And there's action games, which are purely like Doom, it's purely action, and you don't mind reading those if you want to. And then you get
but the thing is there's a varying degree of how games are doing this, though. There's if we're talking about a game like Doom or something else, something that also has important story scenes and exposition dumps and some cut scenes where you can get a general idea of what's going on. Like Dead Space. Dead Space is a good example. I can ignore every single note in Dead Space and still have a good idea of what's going on because of the people who are talking to me and the things that happen in game as you're playing, the things you absorb through environmental storytelling. That's a really good experience. But if you play something like Tormented Souls, and you don't read the notes, like you don't even know what the hell's going on. Or like, I don't know if that's the right example, but I don't like that I can play through a game and have no clue what was going on just because I didn't read the notes. And yes, I'm inconsistent about this. I'm saying that I do care more about this in horror games as a horror fan because I feel horror games are a great place for storytelling because of their slow pacing generally. If I'm playing a 100 bullets per second action game, it's easier for me to let it slide, but the criticism does still apply. I still don't like that I can play through an action game and not know what's going on unless I read notes. It applies to all, but it's more important to me in horror games.
There's a difference between action horror and mainly storytelling horror. If we look at the Lovecraftian games, which are often set in 17th to 19th century, they're more like detective games with suspense and the threat of death instead of the action horror where you mow down through body horror. When you have the latter, you can work better through with the cutscenes. When you have the former, that explicitly works with the horror you make up in your head, which also is produced better by the diary notes or anything else that you find in the world, instead of blatantly showing the monster. It's the whole point of Lovecraftian horror.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, I think another thing too is like, you have to consider like the length of a note as well too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like
There's
usually,
a lot
like
of
when you pick up
context to this.
usually like when you pick up a note, it's like maybe like 1 or 2 pages, but sometimes you'll get like a note that's like 6 pages long, or a diary entry that's like 6 pages long. It's like you're reading through it, you know, just to get like some context of like to the story as well. I think that's like another important thing is like how much of the note is there to read. I think you brought that up in your when you were talking about Dead Space. Like there's like notes talking about the extended lore, like the unitologists, you know, talking about their faith and what they believe in. Like, you know, if I pick up a note like that in Dead Space, I'm just like, okay, I don't really care. I mean, yeah, that's great and everything, but you know, I much prefer the notes that like tell me a story about like what's happening, like, you know, in the station. You know, like tell me about what happened to this group of people over here and what grisly fate that they met. You know, don't tell me something about that happened like, you know, 50 years ago. In the case of like Dead Space, I mean.
I think that's a good example to environmental storytelling, for example, with the Fallout series, when you have skeletons in a certain area with items around them, or notes on their computers, which most of this, if not all of it, is optional. You don't have to do this, but it lends itself to the genre of mystery, which I think Whisp was referring to in horror genre. Horror and mystery sort of work hand in hand. And you want to know, oh, why is this world the way it is? Especially in adventure games. Like I bring up old games like D a lot from 95, which is the same year I think Myst came out. And D is a pure FMV game. There is reading, but it's so like atmospheric. You're just like, what is going on? Like, what is this mood? What is this mansion? What is this place I'm in? What happened to my dad? Like all these questions start popping up. So you want to keep reading. And I remember playing it with my whole cousins, because this is like a 2-hour game. This is not a big game. And
if you know what you need to do, it's 2 hours.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think I played for a bit, 2.5, but yeah, it's a slow game. And you get into it and you're just like, man, this is a lot of books. Like this is a lot of notes, and I got to figure out this puzzle. So you want to read more. You need to read more. There's a nuance here. There's a puzzle, because then there wasn't any, like, if you read a page, boom, you got the password instantly, and then Fallout will figure that out for you. No, you have to actually write it down. You have to read the damn thing, and here's the password, and here's the code, let me write that down, and then trek back to wherever the locked door was. So the genres work with that. You gave examples like Nightmare of Decay had a good balance of note reading, so the note reading there was good for you.
Resident Evil 1, Silent Hill 2. These are good amounts of gameplay that separate notes. That's my main point here. Like I don't want anyone to come away with like a universal criticism saying that any game that has, you know, lots of note-based story reading is bad. No. Like anything, there's a good way to do it and there's a bad way to do it. And what I think that a lot of games are doing is I think they're doing the bad way. I think they're doing the lazy way. Like just Amnesia the Bunker. Like everyone, please play Amnesia the Bunker. It might be my game of the year. It's one of the best survival horror games I've ever played. But like, tell me that you can play that game without reading the notes and know anything that's going on. No, you can't, because there is no storytelling outside of the notes. And the notes are just so, they're just so everywhere, and they're long, and I'm tired of it. Signalis, man, like you can't understand Signalis without reading like 100 notes. There's like 3 notes per room. Sometimes you stop every 2 or 3 minutes just to read a note, and I just don't think that's a good way to tell your story. In most of these games, I think there's better ways to do it.
Right. Sorry to cut you off.
No. You go.
Going off of the Bunker, for example, I have that game right now, and some of the objectives are actually written on the notes that you pick up. So it's not like you get an automatic update on the corner of your screen that says go to the generator, go to this place. You actually have to pick up notes, and it'll highlight, you know, or it'll highlight the note in question that'll tell you, and it doesn't tell you directly like go to this place and do this thing. It blends it into the story. Yeah,
that's a trickier subject when it comes to notes being important, because at the end of the day, that's what I want. I want, if I'm picking up notes and I pick up a note, I want there to be a damn good chance that this note is relevant to my experience.
Mm-hmm.
And whether maybe it's a puzzle, like, I mean, going back to Silent Hill, I mean, Silent Hill does this wonderfully, all right? You pick up a note, it's a puzzle clue, or it's something important about an important character that you're interacting with, or yourself, or where to go, or what you need to find, or a key location. Like, there's a very high likelihood that something you're reading is important to the experience. And in the Bunker, or in a lot of other games, or like Alien Isolation, or many games where there's a lot of notes, or consoles, or Prey's another example. Love Prey, but then there's like 200 notes and emails you can read through. The chance that something is going to be important to the gameplay in those games is minuscule. And that's when I start to get annoyed, when there's a 5% chance that this note is actually something that's going to apply, because then I start, if you're also giving me many notes over a short period of time, and I just kind of start losing interest after a while. I mean, after a couple hours, I'm like, okay, you know what? The story isn't really grabbing me. I've been reading these notes. I'm not really into it. So I think I'm going to skip the pages from now on. Well,
I'd say
that becomes much harder to do if occasionally they give you something important with gameplay. So then I start getting pissed, because now I have to sift through notes that I'm not even interested in anymore, just looking for a possible puzzle solution.
Yeah, I'd say the problem is in the games you mentioned is inflationary notes that bury the important ones.
Yes.
And
Yes.
if you have all these extras, when they do tell an interesting side story in the world that has its own little intriguing bits about it, okay. If you have too much of the spam, you can have a little bit of spam, but too much, yeah, I would agree. I would agree that becomes inflationary, and that's losing the substance of this storytelling tool in video games. And that certainly fits the types of games you mentioned. When on the other hand you play something like Morrowind, then the world is the story. Then you walk through and you want to read every book, because every book tells you something about the world and why the hell you're even here. And if you stumble across the Argonian maid, well, it's part of the world. It at least makes you laugh.
I was going to say, games like Planescape Torment, the point of exploration, like the game is to explore the world of Sigil and the other cities. The point is to get more story, and you are in that game to get more reading, more.
Yeah, it
because
really
you don't know what
the
the goal even is.
Yeah.
Right. So the nature or the premise is a mystery. So you have to keep understanding more, and then you get experience points for reading, which is crazy. So games, if they give
high
you
style points for reading real fast, that's really fast.
Yeah, style point. Yeah, no, but that would give an incentive to the player if they get experience for reading. Some of the books in Pathfinder, Kingmaker, as well as Wrath of the Righteous have experience points, or permanent buffs, just for picking up a note or reading a book. So I thought that was a good incentive to go everywhere, because it may help you a +1 in combat for whatever reason. So anyway, those are my two main questions. I have 5 more from the audience from Discord. I'm going to hand it over to Whisp if you have any questions for Under the Mail.
Before you get into the questions, there's something you said at the beginning of the podcast in your intro, something that I would like to kind of modify if I could. When talking about how I grew up and the games I played and how long I've been playing games, and you talked about how I'm gonna know a whole bunch of games and the action and adventure games. It's really not the case, because I'm the kind of gamer, I hate the word, but I'm the kind of gamer that plays like 2 or 3 titles a year but goes super hard into them. There's I was never the kind of person that rented a different game every week or got a whole bunch of games from their parents. I actually missed out on a lot, unfortunately. But the games that I did play are the games that I played religiously for months and dove in super deep, and that was always kind of my style. And so there's a lot of classics that just passed me by because I was just so hyper focused on perfecting Resident Evil 2 or Metal Gear Solid or playing Twisted Metal 2 for a year straight. You know what I mean?
Jeez.
Like that's the kind of guy I was. And so the YouTube thing has helped me branch out a lot more because I'm covering a lot more games. People are recommending me a lot more games. I've gone from playing maybe 4 or 5 different games a year to playing like 40 now. So I've had I'm playing new stuff. I'm also like going back to old stuff that just kind of passed me by. So I know far fewer games than I would like to, but the games that I did focus on really helped me kind of hone in on what I value. And now I'm going through other titles, and every time I play something that I missed or something new, that helps me kind of broaden my perspective a little bit.
I would say that it shows rather well, because when you do have even the most recent video I mentioned before, you mentioned like at least 12 games. Like, you know what you're talking about. So you have either touched them or seen them, at least played through some of them to know that this is the thing that I've played. Sure. This is the note mechanic. This is the reload mechanic, whatever the issue is. So you obviously have gotten better. So that's good to hear.
Well, that's good. I don't want to get worse.
Hopefully, as we age, we get better. Yeah, that's true. Wisp, right. Okay. Do you got any questions from under the mail?
2 or 3. First one is similar to the note thing, and the way it's structured in the video. That was, you said, oh, was that the video? No, that's the recent video, the Silent Hill video. Where you said video games for decades had largely been known for shallow, inelegant storytelling. And you bring up that by the late 90s, the gaming audiences were craving more. There's where I had a for like, what, why, how do you know? Or where the games just made because they were possible and people liked it. Because then it's not that the games were made because people were craving them, it's that they were made because it was possible and people bought them because they were great. But then those types of games also existed before, which you also mention right after that, which again seems like this you build up the problem and then you say, oh, but it actually wasn't a problem. But now I got to make a point, which that just confuses me.
I'm confused too. What are we getting at here? I mean, okay.
You bring up great storytelling points, games, and with saying that in the 90s, in the late 90s, there was the bigger boom, and with inelegant storytelling, you show Super Mario 64.
Yeah,
and then say, oh, but I'm sure in the comments now somebody's gonna bring up some old NES game that had great storytelling, which is what defeats the entire point that you made, that there was no great storytelling before. Well, it's just that it's been different genres.
Why I don't know why you're taking such an extreme perspective on it, though, because I did not say that no game ever had great or complex storytelling. I never ever said that. I said that there was a craving.
That afterwards, but where's the craving come from? The games were there, the people already wanted them. I think the point is in your final explanation is where you say the late 90s really saw the rise of big epic cinematic storytelling. And I get the feeling that because you complain about these inflationary notes so much, that you want more of the cinematic storytelling because that goes hand in hand with the environmental storytelling.
Okay.
And in lots of older games, you had to read everything. All dialogue was you had to read. There was no voiceover.
Right.
So for me, there's not much difference between reading the text boxes between characters talking with each other and the note on a table. Maybe that's a generational thing. I don't know.
Oh, all right.
I
still don't see what the issue is here. I mean, what I'm saying is that I think both things can be true. I think game developers getting better at storytelling and having better technology to tell stories was able to deliver better storytelling to people who didn't even know they wanted it, but also with gaming really booming, and I mean video games, the 1990 or 89, going from Mario running right on the screen, after 7 to 10 years of that, I think there was also an openness and desire in gamers who were getting older and getting into their teenage years, who were absolutely wanting and ready for bigger and bolder stories.
I don't think that's an age thing, because games with really big stories and great characters like Lufia were in the early 90s, and those were played by kids. I don't think that's an age issue.
Okay,
just as the remakes are not an age issue about the people who played the originals. No, the remakes that's just the nostalgia audience. The remakes are rather aimed for those kids that haven't played the original games because they're on old consoles, have old graphics, and you can re-release the same thing to them more or less. So they are actually experiencing them the first time.
Okay, then ignore what I said about age. It doesn't have to be about age. I was speaking more from my own personal experience. It doesn't have to be all about age. I'm talking about the gaming public generally. That people got way more into video games in the 90s than they had before because of the Nintendo and the Genesis and PC gaming. And so after years of that, people were ready and open for bigger storytelling, and devs were also way more capable of doing it. And that's why something like Half-Life comes out.
I don't understand where
Metal Gear Solid comes out. It just blows people away with their stories.
Yeah, but I seriously don't understand where this growing openness is supposed to be coming from when the games were made already. Those were in the early 90s already there. It's not that Metal Gear Solid did something greater in that aspect. It was very well written, and it had cutscenes. The old Super Nintendo games, they didn't have the room for cutscenes, plainly speaking. That's all it is. The writing was already good. What I rather saw in the 2000s, mid to late 2000s, was that writing took a deep dive, and you got all these inflationary games that were just, we got the better 3D graphics, and now we got the even better 3D graphics, and the even better 3D graphics. But writing took a nosedive, just like Hollywood writing took a nosedive when they could get better and better special effects. So, and now we're getting this sort of indie renaissance, and that is also wavering with the politics that get put into everything, but you still get the good indie stuff. That's free of that. That's the later stage. But in the 90s, 2000s, I think the writing was always there. It's just how you package it, and maybe it also depends on what genres were you into. Because in a jump and run or in an action shooter, you don't get as much story most likely as in an RPG, or even in a real-time strategy game. Or most strategy games, because those things, we don't play them to just build the base again and run to the other enemy. We play campaigns, and the campaigns need good stories. Command and Conquer had an also for the time limited, of course, had a tremendous story with the Global Defense Initiative versus this weird, mysterious Brotherhood of Nod, and the missions were completely different. So those games completely relied on good storytelling.
I didn't say that there were no games that had great storytelling. I didn't say that.
Yeah, but you keep saying that, in the late 90s, there was this big increase.
Yeah,
I don't see that there's an increase. I think it's the same.
Okay, great. Can we move on?
Okay, sure.
What else do you have, Whisp? Any other questions?
Yeah. Mainly just wording.
Okay, but that's
wording
you could leave a comment on his video. I mean, I've had nuance. Like, obviously, everyone needs an editor to make sure their grammar checks out and what they're saying.
Logic, it's not about the grammar.
Well, grammar, logic, we can be nitpicky as much as we want. That's kind of what we did on this podcast anyway. So that's fine. Anyway, Bad Boy Betty, you don't have any questions. That's fine. I have.
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay. I know Bad Boy Betty. We had another guy called Gigaman who was a big fan of Res Evil. And
He actually did send me a note, Ginga.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. He says it's actually more of a clarification than a question regarding your Mayo's RE4 didn't save the franchise video.
Yes.
And I'm a pretty, I wouldn't say hardcore, but I'm a very big fan of Resident Evil as well too.
Nice. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. And he writes, when listing the reasons for why Code Veronica didn't sell well upon its release, it came off as if Mayo said that CV was being a spin-off when it wasn't. I'm reading, verbatim what he's saying. The reason why it was treated as a spin-off back then is because CV was meant to be Resident Evil 3, and Nemesis was going to be the actual spin-off, but a brief Sony exclusivity deal prevented CV from being released as intended.
Okay.
Not a question, just he just wanted like a clarification on that. I mean, he meant it as a clarification. Sorry.
Oh, I mean, okay. You can clarify. You can give whatever reasons it is, but Resident Evil 3 Nemesis is called Resident Evil 3, and so
right.
it is
I
the
get
sequel.
that.
So whatever is not named an official title is a spinoff, even if it was originally developed as what was supposed to be Resident Evil 3. If it ended up not being Resident Evil 3, then by default it becomes a spinoff. And so being thought of as a spinoff, I think, will lower your sales.
Yeah. And
even if it technically
there
isn't.
are Resident Evil spinoffs that didn't sell very well. Like, I mean, I don't know. I think didn't Survivor didn't sell very well, did it? I don't know. Survivor was pretty bad.
I don't remember. I think I might have those sales statistics in the video. I might not, since I don't talk about it. I think I may have.
Yeah.
All right. If
I would also like to say that Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, even though it was developed as a spin-off, it makes for a great part 3. It closes the Raccoon City storyline. It's great.
Just a shame, as someone who never played the original Resident Evil 3 because I didn't have a PlayStation, I had a Nintendo 64.
Yeah.
As someone who never played the original, I did play the remake when it came out, and yeah, I kind of wish I played the original, to be perfectly honest.
Hey man, I'll hook you up with a PC version if you need it.
I'll get the emulator. I'll get the emulator on my own time. I mean,
Great.
I appreciate it. Don't
Game.
get me wrong, but yeah.
I'm happy to send it. Like one of the greatest honors of my time on YouTube is that I've gotten a lot of people to go play original Resident Evil games, which has just been so wonderful.
Yeah,
whole new generation of fans are discovering those old games and seeing how good they are.
All right. Well, these are 5, I wouldn't say quick questions from the Discord, but they are not well articulated. So if they're come across as weird or even mean, these are just people saying something. Why did you say this? Why did you do that? So it's like
I get mean every day. So.
Yeah. Okay. So this is from 2345. He has 2 questions. The first one is, how come Mayo can excuse or debunk the complaints of a game like Doom Eternal, but make the same complaint for other games like Ultra Kill and Elden Ring? And I don't know what those complaints are, so I do apologize if I can answer that in any detail.
I don't know either, man. I don't know. I don't know, because I'm a horrible person.
Okay, you're just a horrible. That's the answer to everything. There we go. All right.
Oh my God! How do you excuse the problems of Doom Eternal while focusing on them in Elden Ring? What does that even mean?
General tip for formulating questions: give 1 or 2 examples of what you mean.
Yeah,
okay.
That'd be very helpful. Anyway,
just assume people don't see what you see.
Well, look, this is the typical stuff that I run into. I don't have complaints about Elden Ring. Well, I have personal complaints because it's full of stuff I don't enjoy, but I don't have criticisms about it. Like issues in Doom Eternal that I ignore but focus on in Elden Ring. I don't think, look, I don't know Elden Ring enough to talk about its issues. I don't even know what the issues are. I don't enjoy it for my own personal reasons. I don't enjoy those kinds of games, but like I don't enjoy them because I think it's not because I think they're bad. It's because they're not to my personal liking. Jeez,
Fair enough.
Like that is daily.
Yeah.
I get that daily. Okay.
So since we don't have any specific context, I think that's fair. That's totally cool. Okay. The second one from this person is, since it's going to be about horror, I don't know if that's what he meant about the actual interview, thoughts on analog horror genre. I'm not sure does anyone know what the analog horror genre is?
Analog horror?
Yeah.
Like board games?
I don't know. I wish I could tell you. But this continues. Thoughts on analog horror genre like Local 58, Mandela Catalog, and Vita Carnis. Ever played any RPG Maker horror like Corpse Party and The Crooked Man? Wow,
I don't know any of those games, but I'm looking it up. Local 58, or what was it? Horror web series?
Well, the analog horror genre, Local 58, Mandela Catalog, and Vita Carnis.
Mandela Catalog. Also, it's like they look like horror games that are like made on VHS tapes.
Oh, really?
Like surrealism genre.
Interesting.
What? I see like real actors. I don't know this, but this sounds like something I should know. So maybe I'll check it out. I mean, maybe someday I'll cover it. Corpse Party. I mean, that sounds like my kind of jam.
Oh, RPG Maker. Have you ever seen the engine before?
Okay. No.
Corpse Party sounds like an anime.
Well, it is, but the RPG Maker is a engine for making the late or early 90s RPGs that there's no coding. You just drop stuff in and have scripts to open up gates to go at other scripts. So
that's an entire scene of hobby game makers. And as with everything, 90% is crap. And then there are some absolute gems in there that you think like that they didn't make that in that thing, or you find some things with absolutely astonishing writing.
Right, like Gone Home is a great example. Sorry, what's the one that the guy lives out his last days as if he was young again, and it's the last thing he'll ever do because he's really an old man? Oh, was it called Gone Home? I can't recall. Anyway, I'll check that out later.
Doesn't sound familiar.
I know it's his classic RPG Maker game. I just never tried it. Everyone's, you got to play it. It's amazing. It's like, never get around to it. Anyway,
I am.
Yeah, but yeah, to the whoever
with RPG Maker.
To whoever asked the question, I don't know those games, but it does sound really interesting. So I mean, maybe someday I can check it out.
They are all public in the Smudcast public Discord. So if you want to check them out and ask them directly, that's from 2345. So you can just add him and ask him what he's talking about, because I have no idea either. But thank you for those two questions, sir. The next question is from Account 12. That's his name.
Ooh,
here we go.
Spooky.
Why play System Shock Remake on Combat 1 and review it as such when default difficulty is 2? And he says Combat 1 lets you respawn with more than 3/4. And I don't know what 3/4 means. I mean 3/4
health probably.
I hope so. Which is what the references as a flaw. 2 is slightly more than 1/4, and 3 is less than 1/4. Tested it myself, and I'm like, okay, why did you do that, sir?
Okay, well, I played it on various difficulties of each setting to test it out. But if my criticism was based on the lowest combat setting, and it should have been based on 2, I probably just didn't notice the different health amount on respawn. So that was just an oversight. But I mean, if that hurts one of my criticisms about the respawn, if that makes the respawn better, then sure, I'll give you that. But really, my issue is your progress being saved on respawn. That is my main issue, is that you can walk into a fight, kill enemies, die, and respawn, and then go back to that area and everyone's still dead. That's a kind of game design that I really find off-putting. And so whether you respawn with full health, half health, or a fourth health, it doesn't really matter to me. The problem is still there, that your progress is saved.
Okay.
I'm assuming that's the respawn mechanic that he's talking about, because there's multiple ways to reload back into the game, which is kind of weird. There's checkpoints and there's auto saves, and then there's like places where you can spawn yourself back, and I feel like one of those should have been cut.
Okay, good to know. That's very.
But yeah, if I made a mistake, or if I should have considered a different health amount that I didn't notice myself, then that's a mistake, and that's on me.
And there's nothing wrong with leaving that in the comments of his videos. Go right ahead. He's open to suggestion. That's totally fine. Okay. All right, 2 more, and we're done. This is from GawPro. Thank you, sir. When will you do a video on Alan Wake? And I'm assuming that's the original Alan Wake, not Alan Wake 2.
Ooh, Alan Wake 2 is coming out when? Is it this year?
I don't know.
I think it is. I'll try to get to Alan Wake 1 before that comes out, and maybe I'll try to time it to come out sometime around when the sequel comes out. Something, G-Man typically does that kind of stuff. I might go with that kind of style. So wait for the sequel to come out, and maybe I'll do something on Alan Wake then. No current plans though. I'm quite busy.
I just checked the release date. I thought it was going to be in December, but apparently it's only October the 17th. So
October. Ooh, that'll make October. Right. That'll be perfect.
All right.
So 90% chance I'll have something on it around then.
It's good for the clicks.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh, gotta get those clicks, man.
All right. Here's another nuanced question. Why did you act like going from 3 weapons in Fear to 2 in Trepang was a big deal when Trepang isn't a horror shooter and also lets you dual wield as a new mechanic?
Oh man, Trepang people are weird, man. They are weird. Okay, look, my point is that you've taken Fear's combat loop and you've amped it up. You've made it much faster and much more chaotic, while also taking away one of my weapon slots, so that I end up with these weapons that I like and I can't have a third one. I would love to hold a pistol, or I would love to have the shotgun and an assault rifle and also keep, a sniper rifle on me or something like you could in Fear. So I think that they have made the combat like way more intense, while also taking away one of my weapon options. And also in Fear, you could hold 3 different equipment types, 3 different grenade types, and then in Trepang you can only hold 1. So they've significantly reduced your combat options while amping up the intensity of combat. I think that was a mistake. It made it less fun for me. A game that I did think was fun. I enjoyed Trepang 2, but the bullshit weapon limit and the bullshit grenade limit is something that makes me not want to replay it.
Totally fair. Thank you very much. Okay, well, that was all that we had for Mr. Under the Mayo. Thank you guys for your questions. He is in the Discord. You could always add him and say hello. Don't nag him too much. If you have any specific comments on his videos, you got the comment section in YouTube. Be nice, of course. And it seems like the people who wanted to ask you questions are very nuanced, so they are up your alley. I'm sure you'd be happy to reply if you ever had the desire, if it's up to you. But
I try to engage. I try to engage when I can.
I try not to, but that's just me. It's a dangerous place, that YouTube comment section. So
You still can't stop yourself.
when I need to, I need to. Other than that, I let go. I say,
I'm honestly surprised that the great majority of this podcast has been story focused. When I go so hard on like player accountability, game mechanics, and stuff like that, I'm this is not a complaint. This is what I end up normally talking about when I get invited on these things. So actually, just having something where we ended up talking about the nuance of storytelling has been, I'd call it refreshing.
oh yeah, I mean, I could ramble on about the technical aspects of Unreal and Quake 3, and the Quake 2 has a reload mechanic with the railgun, and blah blah blah. I was like, yeah, it's fine. Who cares? It's not a
Oh
big
man,
deal.
bombing run is the greatest gaming mode ever created.
Okay.
Oh man, 2003 bombing run.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Couldn't get enough.
All right. Well, I had friends who would. These were guys that were in LAN parties in the late '90s and early 2000s, and they were hardcore FPS guys. So Quake 3 was always their game of competition. So you would just see them fighting polygons, like they would turn down all the graphics because at the time, Quake 3, if you don't know the engine between like say Quake and Unreal, everything was streamlined, so it doesn't matter what hardware you had. In Quake 3, you had to bring your biggest box, like your hardest, like Alienware Labs or whatever you got, and the harder, the better the processor, the faster the game ran for you, the more frames you got. Whereas the guys with the average computers would keep losing. So the hardcore players, which were also like jocks because they were just pumped full of testosterone and adrenaline.
Yeah.
They turned down all the graphics. You're looking at a bunch of polys on the screen, like they're playing some weird 80s game Tron or something. And they would have these macros set up for like, oh, I got the railgun, time to turn on the slow mouse sensitivity so everything's nuanced, and then
That's awesome.
Then turn it off, go back to the rocket launcher, like all this fast-paced Twitch gameplay show.
It's just pure bypass the big brain, just go right to the spine.
Oh, jeez.
It's Zen gaming.
Quake 3 was like the, I mean, maybe not technically historically correct, but this is how I remember it. It was like Quake 3 was like that first game that came out and said, you need to buy a graphics card. You are not playing our game. Let's fucking beef up your PC, and we're going to be the game to do it.
Yeah, it's John Carmack saying, well, you don't need to buy a new PC, but...
I mean, in those ages, it was important for a game to come along every once in a while and say, hey, you guys got to level up your game. We're going forward into the future now. id Software was a company to do it for sure.
The only problem was at the time there were no really cost-effective laptops to bring to LAN parties, so all you had was people with shopping carts carrying their towers and their CRTs in these big shopping carts and setting up their rigs. It was so funny to see these guys serious about LAN party.
It was a beautiful ritual. I was baking waffles on my CRT.
You're kidding. Oh my god.
Oh, dude! I mean, we used to do that. I used to have like 8 or 9 guys at my place with all our big ass PC setups and the big CRT monitors. We would play Unreal Tournament 2004 a lot, and we would play Warhammer 40K Dawn of War, the real time strategy game. We would those were really good times.
Yeah, it was Day of Defeat. It was Doom 2 4-player network. That like all these really specific hardcore games that you don't get anymore, but even Diablo 2 was a thing that I remember playing with a lot of friends.
Yeah.
So
I never got into the Diablo series. I don't know, something about it just never attracted me. I think it's an aesthetic thing.
It has great storytelling.
Yeah, okay.
The first one definitely has.
Yeah, no, I've seen that as well. I think it was just I think I'm just not into the aesthetic, like medieval fantasy, knights, dragons, skeleton guys, wizard spells. It's just never been my jam, It's hard for me to I can watch a movie, but playing a game in that time period, it's really hard for me to even get into it, no matter how well the game is made.
You're not a sci-fi guy?
Yeah, I'd rather play StarCraft, or I'd rather be in a spaceship, shooting aliens, or a horror game with zombies or demons and stuff like that. It's just something about knights and armor and horses and fields and castles and dungeons, and it just doesn't do it for me. I mean, I'm sure the games are great. It's not a criticism at all. It's just
no. That's completely normal, but that also may explain why you missed out on so many great storytelling role-playing games in the 90s.
Yeah,
those were mostly medieval settings.
It's very likely that that you had really strong storytelling, but it was kind of like in certain genres. If I'm playing Twisted Metal and the first Resident Evil and Sonic and Mortal Kombat and all the stuff where there is story to it. There are worlds there that are interesting, right? But it's not like they're focused on trying to tell you a good story. And then, so if we come back to our other point, when we were going back and forth on the story stuff, in the late 90s, you saw strong storytelling start to branch out into more genres of games and into more and more titles instead of it, in my experience, feeling like the exception. It started to feel like what was happening across a lot of games that I was playing. I was starting to see
it's mainly because the technology became available.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And that's all. I mean, you had a lot of great story in the LucasArts adventures. It's just that technologically they're not that great. They were great for the time, considering what they did in order to get the graphics together. But that's its own topic. I think this is one of these topics where the Miyamoto quote hits well, where he says gameplay is everything, which has a more nuanced interpretation, and that is, if you want a story-focused game, if you want to have good story in your game, make it exceptionally good. Don't blabber. And if you mess up the gameplay, then your storytelling has to compensate even more for that. And the prime example we bring up here is always Planescape Torment, because man, the mechanics are garbage.
All right,
you don't want to fight in that game.
You don't have to.
I mean, I would say 99% of the time I would rather. I value gameplay more than storytelling, but it takes something special for me to go the other way, and that's something like a Silent Hill 2. Like, the more I play it over the years, the more I see its flaws in its gameplay, in its resource balancing, in the way the controls and combat feel, in the difficulty balancing. I see those things more and more. But the thing is, the emotional connection I have to its story and its visuals and its music are a priority to me. And so that's why when I talk about the remake coming out, that like, hey, they may nail everything about the gameplay and the levels and puzzles. They may get all right. It may be a great survival horror game. I'm totally open to that. But if the story is screwed up somehow, I'm going to be a lot more upset, because it's one of the few games where I care a lot more about the characters and narrative than I do about the actual gameplay.
Okay, we got one super chat from, I think it's Gaw again, but he decided to give it a super chat version. That's fine. Big question I had was Resident Evil 0 not in his Resident Evil 4 vid. I actually remember this topic coming up in our Smudcast. I think Gigaman was like, why didn't he talk about Resident Evil 0 at all?
Because I don't feel it was really relevant, because it doesn't really add anything to the discussion. It basically sold the same numbers as the RE remake did, and it was also a GameCube exclusive. And so I don't really see what it has to do with the overall story I was telling when it comes to Resident Evil popularity and sales. It's the exact same story as the remake, like in terms of the conditions in which it was sold as a GameCube exclusive and the sales that it got.
All right.
I don't think it really adds much to the information to mention 0, so I just didn't.
Well, I'm sure if we had Bad Boy and Gigaman on just to talk about Resident Evil, we'd be going on for hours and hours. We are just cutting 59 minutes. Thank you so much for your time.
Hey, I'm here,
Well, if we want to have a discussion on specifically Resident Evil, I will invite him back on. I'm sure you guys have lots to talk about.
I know.
This was fun. I mean, if you guys ever, you want me back, or a guest cancels and you need someone to hop on, I mean, this was fun. So, yeah.
All right.
Ran for 5 hours about Ragnarok.
Oh, no. Let's not do that again.
I will say this is something that I do like to mention when it comes to Ragnarok. This is something I try to say on some of my podcasts, because I try to kind of talk about my Callisto Protocol video. That is a really good example of YouTube burnout, because Ragnarok, because there were people who had an issue with the way I approached the Callisto Protocol video, because it sounded like I was phoning it in, and in a way I was because I had just played God of War Ragnarok for 3 weeks straight and got an hour video out in that time. I was dead. I was pissed off. And I was like, I am ready for something good. Oh, right. Callisto Protocol is coming out. Hell yeah.
Ooh.
And then I played it. And I was just like, I was crushed. I was just crushed. And I was trying to write this. And I see everyone on YouTube, they're just shitting all over it. They're basically saying what I would say too. And I get on and I start writing the script. I'm like, what the fuck do I even say about this? Like, what's the point in just coming on here and just echoing what everyone else is already saying? So I tried to figure out some other, let's talk about the positive aspects of the combat, etc., stuff like that. But you can hear it in my voice that I'm just tired, that I'm just like I'm upset, and I need something good, and I need some time off, which I pretty much took after that video.
Yeah, well, that was like watching the Hobbit trilogy,
Mm.
and then I need something good now. And so I'll watch this new movie from Michael Bay.
Oh.
And it's like, oh shit.
Oh man. It's like, what?
Yeah,
Matrix 4 is coming out.
Callisto,
Great.
Don't play the DLC. Yeah, and speaking of Callisto, don't play the DLC.
I'm not touching that game ever
final-
again.
If Hawk was here, he would agree with you. He wasn't Ragnarok Sullied. He just played Callisto Protocol, and he was so disappointed. He ranted in chat for days. It's a bad game.
What were you saying about the DLC?
The DLC's worse. The DLC's worse.
Oh no.
The Callisto Protocol DLC is worse. Because, okay, spoilers for the DLC. It immediately starts you off. It's like, oh, Jacob is alive. You know, it's like, okay, well, how did he survive? Doesn't matter. Don't care. You know, he's alive. Then you get to the end of it. It's like, oh, it was all a dream.
Oh.
The entire DLC is all a dream. The entire DLC is all a dream. As he's dying, he's had all of his arms and all of his legs ripped off, and he's dying. And that's the last neurons in his brain firing.
Oh, so this is a science fiction, but we're doing that. It was all a dream scenario.
Well, the DLC was all just a dream.
Oh, okay.
Like,
that sounds great.
Yeah, it was all just
really
a dream
good.
as he was dying.
That is one of the no-nos in storytelling you never, ever do. That is such a bad idea. But, you know, we all know the bad things of Callisto Protocol, and you can watch the compilation of all the death animations is probably the most exciting part of the game. So
the heads all
you get
cut
a new
in the
weapon.
exact same
And you
way.
get you get a new weapon in the last 30 minutes of the DLC. Of this 2-hour DLC. Great. Awesome.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for
Sledgehammer.
Mayo. Thank you for coming on. If you guys want to check out his channel, it's in the link in the description. And he's in the Discord. You can say hello. It's totally cool. He seems like a friendly guy. Don't be shy. Say hi.
I am friendly.
Okay.
Check out my new Silent Hill stuff, please. That's what I'm really proud of lately.
All right. Good to hear. Well, thank you so much for your time, everyone. And I hope you have a great Friday. Take it easy. Have a drink. Relax. Do your evening exercise routines, whatever you guys do. Have a good one. Take it easy. Good night. Bye-bye.
Night.